In 1520, when Hernando Magellan first landed in Patagonia, his only concern was finding a safe haven from the stormy waters around the Cape Horn. Almost 500 years later, we had come to Patagonia for entirely different reasons, to trek the fabled Torres del Paine circuit, famed for its towering granite spires, its Andean wildlife and awesome scenery. But our first concern was how to get there. Founded in 1911, Puerto Natales lies at the southernmost edge of a 1,000-mile archipelago of fjords, glaciers and islands, stretching from Puerto Montt to Tierra del Fuego. It is a bleak and windswept Chilean shipping port, as well as the last inhabited stop before reaching the National Park. There is little to do here except go fishing, or enjoy the many coffee shops scattered around town. It was here that we began our final planning for the trip. With at least 7 days walking ahead of us and notoriously fickle weather to contend with, nothing could be left to chance.
This is the George Michael look, for those who are interested.
It was also a last chance to indulge in the trappings of civilization, before being buffeted by the notorious Patagonian winds and icy rivers, where simple luxuries, such as shaving, would become long-forgotten memories. Accommodation in Puerto Montt is comfortable but basic, but at least costs can be kept low by sleeping in dormitories. There is, however, the small problem of noise.
Sleep.
There are only a few bus companies making the bumpy ride from Puerto Natales to the park proper, and seats can often be at a premium, especially as the buses tend to leave very early in the morning. The trip does afford, however, an early glimpse of the amazing scenery to come. Unfortunately, heavy rains and biting winds had forced us from our planned route, even before we had set off, and we instead made camp at Hosteria Las Torres. With prices for a dormitory in the Hosteria beginning at $100 however, we decided to spend the night under the stars with the horses instead. The next morning, with much improved weather, we were back en route, and once again on schedule. The trail surprisingly following a pleasantly enjoyable mountain track high above the Rio Paine valley below. Whilst the scenery lends itself to a fairly leisurely walking pace, the need to carry as much as 7 days' worth of food means that you can expect to carry fairly heavy backpacks. It also means that you can't afford to take too long on the trail, or you will soon run out of food, as to carry anything more than 7 days of provisions would be too tough without horses. The girls in particular seemed to have overly heavy bags, and indeed were almost dwarfed by the size of their rucksacks. Horses would also have been useful for the many river crossings needed, never mind being able to carry the bags for us. It is possible to hire mules or horses for the trek, but this then makes the circuit a very expensive proposition indeed. With dry, sunny weather, however, it was often easy to forget about the weight of the packs and to just enjoy the scenery. Open rolling hills with majestic mountains towering over the horizon, and flower-filled fields just coming into bloom. It was fortunate that the rains from the first day's walk had not persisted, as some of the rivers would have become impassable. As it was, they proved to be formidable obstacles, and for Pat, they were to really test her adventurous mettle.
Adam, can you move out of the way? Maybe you can watch Pat falling. Maybe you can watch Pat falling in. On video.
But with coaching and help from the resident knight in shining armour, Adam, she finally managed to get across. After the rivers, the cooling forest paths were a welcome break, and progress was much faster. As we trekked deeper into the valley, we were able to get a glimpse of the River Paine, knowing that the campsite would be just around the corner. Camp Saron belongs to a local farmer, and he makes a point of collecting tolls from the campers who choose to use this site. At all other sites, however, the camping is free. With daylight lasting up until 11 p.m, there is little point in sleeping too early, and evenings can be better spent rustling up a campfire. For those who took a dip in the many river crossings, it's also a good opportunity to dry out wet clothes, as long as you don't mind the smell of burnt wood over all your gear. But most of all, it's the perfect time for the team to get together and recount details of the day's walking and activities.
This man is a saint.
After only 2 days into the trek, however, there is little time to relax, and if the circuit is to be completed in the allotted time, it is necessary to break camp daily just to stay on schedule. So once again, camp is struck, bags repacked, and the outrageous loads hoisted onto our backs as we begin the trek to the next campsite. The park maps very frequently give estimated times between campsites, but as we were to quickly discover, the given times were more appropriate for horses than for hikers, and we found that it would take us twice as long to get from camp to camp as listed on the map. Of course, this didn't matter when the scenery was spectacular, or we were afforded a brief glimpse of the Andean wildlife, such as condors far in the distance scavenging for food. Still, the trail was rarely ever flat, and this meant long, hard hauls up steep slopes, only to find another hill and another slope just ahead. Even with the sometimes amazing mountain vistas in the distance, the long day's hikes can prove to be very demanding, and only fit and experienced hikers should attempt the trek. It was fortunate that in our case we had just completed a climb on Aconcagua, the highest mountain in South America, so everyone in the team was properly acclimatized and fit. Even so, with the hot Patagonian sun beating down, it's vital that plenty of opportunity is taken to rest and to rehydrate. Fortunately, there is plenty of water on the trail, and the whole park is, in fact, the perfect picnic spot. By day 3, of course, our tent pitching skills were becoming finely honed, and it was a simple task to get the tent up in record time. Refugio Dixon must have one of the most beautiful settings for a campsite, with lakes to the east, mountains to the west, and glaciers to the north. Unfortunately, it also has the most active mosquito colony this side of the equator, and it is vital that you bring along sufficient insect repellent, or you will find that your beautiful campsite is nothing less than purgatory. With our mosquito tolerance stretched to its limit, we were glad to be back on the trail again. This time we were also spared the heat of the southern sun as we passed through sheltering forests where the air was both cool and comforting. From time to time, we emerged into small clearings where the whole of the Patagonian landscape was stretched out magnificently before us. Here we made a point of taking our time and smelling the roses before shouldering our packs again and pushing on to the next campsite. By day 4, even Pat was becoming far more proficient at crossing rivers, and Adam soon found himself out of a job as the knight in shining armor. However, as we slowly moved up into the mountains, the rivers were becoming more and more spectacular, with dramatic waterfalls and raging torrents blocking our path. It was fortunate then that the park authorities had erected log bridges at strategic points across the trail, or we'd have risked not only a dunking, but even drowning as the ice melt from high up raced back down into the valleys below. But eventually, the climbing and the rivers were behind us, and we finally reached Camp Los Perros, a small secluded site next to Glacier Los Perros, lying directly below the towering granite spires of Cerro Catedral.
咁呢度啦，我哋通常上山啊。
Once again, after we had all arrived into camp and taken a quick breather from the rigours of the trail, it was time to pick a choice spot for the tents. A small stream running through the campsite was too tempting an offer to miss after forgoing a wash for the last 4 days, and Adam, choosing to brave the ice-cold waters, decided to spruce himself up for the remainder of the trek. Whilst Adam agonized on how to get clean without getting wet, the rest of us just relaxed and soaked up the beautiful vistas surrounding the campsite. After all, there would be plenty of opportunity to wash properly when we return to civilization. Sufficiently rested and not plagued by flies as we had been at Refugio Dixon, we hit the trail on day 5 with a renewed vigour. The food was holding up and our bags were getting progressively lighter as we slowly munched our way through the staple diet of rice and cereal. And a spring in the step was still very much needed as we negotiated the last of the glacier runoffs on the run-up to Paso John Garner, which at 1,241 metres was a formidable obstacle still blocking our way. Here on the steep slopes, the team quickly spread out as some chose to push on hard, whilst others took the time to rest and enjoy the snowy peaks that were just starting to come into view. At these altitudes, however, we were mindful of the ever-present dangers of bad weather closing in on us. The effort, as always in this amazing park, was worth it, and for the first time, it was possible to see one of the largest landlocked glaciers in the world sprawled out before us. From this height, it was easy to see the awesome size of Glacier Grey as it stretched out into the distance and onwards into Argentina itself. Camp Paso does not lie actually on the pass, but a good 3 hours away in a small clearing just above the glacier. The trail had proven to be a difficult one, and a number of people had temporarily got lost due to poor markers and slippery terrain. It was timely then when Camp Paso finally materialized, so that the team could regroup and prepare for the last few days of trekking. With the end in sight, the team wasted no time in hitting the trail. Camp Paso had proven to be a busy site due to all the trekkers going in the other direction, and the team was glad of the solitude afforded by being back on the route again. There has been much discussion as to the best direction to do the trek, but based on experience, most would favour an anti-clockwise direction, as this way the most spectacular scenery, that is Glacier Grey, is saved till last. This direction also allows for better acclimatization, as the ascent to Paso John Garner is more gradual than going in a clockwise direction. Once again, rivers proved to be a major obstacle, but by now the team was working well together and making short work of even the trickier and even dangerous crossings. Everybody was mindful, however, that any wrong step would result in a premature visit to the glacier 500 meters below. After a brief overnight stop at Refugio Grey, the team was finally on the last leg of the circuit. With the weather fast deteriorating, most of the team were glad to finally reach Refugio Pejo, where the boat across the lake of of the same name would make the journey back to Pudeto for the connection with the bus back to Puerto Natales. With the end now in sight, the team were able to relax and enjoy the leisurely boat ride back to civilization. But not before being afforded a final glimpse of the rugged and startling Patagonian scenery that marks this park as one of the must-see destinations for all those interested in serious wilderness and adventure camping. But after 7 days of walking, and with the weather once again closing in, it was now time to say farewell to the park, and to return once again to Puerto Natales. For now, however, all that remained was to savour the moment, with a celebration feast of all the leftover food, while we waited for the bus back to a warm shower and civilization.